Now let's understand the process of communication. So the first stage of communication is ideation, where an idea generates or originates in the mind of the sender. So first of all, we have to understand that, we have to understand that in the process of communication, you have the sender and you have the receiver, right? So the sender can be anyone, of course. It can be an individual, it can be a group, it can be an organization, it can be an institution, right? So here the idea is of key importance. So you have the idea which is originating, right? Which is the nucleus of the information that has to be sent. Now, so the first stage is the idea, where it is forming shape or taking shape. Then the next stage is encoding. So encoding is the conversion of the idea into a message in the form of symbols, images, and words that are familiar to the receiver. So here, if the sender wants to be understood by the receiver, the sender has to make sure that while encoding the message, the sender encodes it in the sense that the idea is shaped into a message which can be understood by the receiver. So it has to be in a language that is understood by the receiver. If it has pictures or images or symbols, it should be a part of the receiver's cultural knowledge or awareness. You may have seen in certain films, when, for example, if you're looking at a war film, you have people, soldiers, sending messages or communicating through Morse code. Now, obviously, Morse code is a kind of communication which people like you and me might not understand, right? But those who are sending and those who are receiving, both parties are aware of Morse code. And that is why that is a chosen means of communication, because both of them know how to use it. Similarly, if you look at the Braille script, which is used by the visually challenged, right? So obviously, they can read the Braille script, but people like you and me can't. Or, for example, if the sender is sending it in a language, say English, and if the receiver doesn't understand English, then the communication process is a failure. So the language, the words, the images, the symbols, everything has to be part of the receiver's awareness and knowledge bank. The third important thing is the channel. That's the third stage in the communication process. So what is the means of communication? Is it oral? Oral can be over the phone, or it can be face to face, or it can be through video calling, right? In today's digital age. Then you have written communication. Written could be in the form of a letter, in the form of an email, in the form of a fax, right? Or you can have digital communication. Digital will comprise oral and written both. Or you can have electrical communication also. Now the next stage is decoding. Decoding is where the receiver tries to interpret the message that has been imparted or sent by the sender, right? And a message is successful, or the process of communication is successful only when the receiver attaches the same meaning to the words, symbols, and messages as the sender, right? So it should not so happen that the sender intended to say something and the receiver understood it as something else completely, right? So these two things should be in harmony. The sender and the sender's intention and the receiver's interpretation need to match. And finally, what completes the process of communication is when the receiver responds to the sender. And how does the receiver respond to the sender? Through feedback. So here the roles are reversed and the receiver becomes the sender and the sender receives the message from the receiver.